Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new Google Pixel 8a. More specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the performance of the 8a. When it comes to gaming, emulation, we're also going to run some benchmarks and kind of compare it to the 8 Pro and even a higher-end device like the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. I completely understand that this is a mid-range device, but I want to see what kind of value this offers, coming in with the base price of $499, and with that you get 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. My main Android device right now is a Pixel 8 Pro, and the thing I love about the Pixel devices are the security updates. They guarantee 7 years of Android security updates, and it's no different here for the 8a. And straight off the bat, I personally like the design. Camera hump on the back isn't too bulbous, and we've got a beautiful screen here. It's actually a 6.1-inch, 120Hz OLED display. We'll go over the full specs in just a second, and Google is offering this in a few different color variants. And obviously, we've got the green version. They're calling this Aloe. They've got a blue version known as Bay, black Obsidian, and white Porcelain. It was kind of a toss-up between the green and the blue version, but I think the green does look really nice. Again, we've got a 6.1-inch OLED display up to 120Hz with a resolution of 1080 by 2400, and this will peak out at 2000 nits, so that's kind of daylight mode there. Also supports HDR. Taking a look around the device, over here on the right-hand side, we've got our power button and our volume rocker. Moving over to the left-hand side, micro SD card slot. And on the bottom, dual stereo speakers with USB Type-C. And as far as I can tell, this is actually USB Type-C 3.2, but unfortunately, this does not support video out at the time of making this video. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this is more of a performance test video when it comes to gaming, benchmarks, and emulation. If you're looking for camera test, you can definitely search that up. There's tons of them on YouTube, but it does up to 4K 60, and it looks really good. Now, when it comes to the overall specs, we've got the Tensor G3. This is a nano-core SoC developed by Google. It's the same chip they used in the 8 Pro, plus we've got that Titan M2 security coprocessor, but this is actually a 9-core SoC. We've got one larger X3 core running at 3 GHz, 4 A715 cores at 2.45, and 4 A510 cores at 2.15 GHz. The GPU is the G715S MC10, so we've got a 10-core GPU here, 8 GB of LPDDR5X RAM. You can get this with either 128 GB of storage or 256, but both of them utilize UFS 3.1 storage. 120Hz 6.1-inch OLED display at 1080 by 2400. It does support HDR, and we've got a peak brightness up to 2000 nits. Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.3. A 4,492 mAh battery that supports PD Quick Charging 3.0, and this is running Android 14 out of the box. My main Android device is the Pixel 8 Pro, and I did want to give you a quick size comparison here. Obviously, we've got a larger device with the Pro model. It's coming in with a 6.7-inch display, and when you turn them around, you can really tell the difference. That screen is definitely a lot larger. Since we're going to be taking a look at how the 8a performs in this video, I figured we'd run some benchmarks, and I wanted to compare this against the 8 Pro and the Galaxy S24 Ultra. And again, I completely understand that the S24 Ultra outclasses both of these devices, but since we've got a $499 device, I did want to throw a much more expensive device in here just to kind of give us a look at that performance gap. The first benchmark we have here is Geekbench 6. The 8a on single core is coming in with the 1,654, and I ran these devices multiple times. Looks like the 8 Pro is beating out the 8a by just a little bit, but you know, they would go toe-to-toe if I ran these a few more times side by side. We could probably even out, because after all, they've got the same exact CPU. And moving down to the end with the S24 Ultra, that's got that Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy. The performance gap here is pretty wide. I mean, obviously that S24 is beating it out. Moving over to a GPU benchmark, we've got 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme. The 8a coming in with a 2,459, which did beat out the 8 Pro by a bit. But then moving on down, again, that gap is really, really wide there. 5,071 on the S24 Ultra. And finally, we've got the Antutu benchmark. 8a coming in with a 1,191,997. The 8 Pro isn't beating it out by that much, but again, going down to the end, we've got that S24 Ultra, which is just dominating here. Over 2 million in Antutu. But now I want to move over to some real-world native Android gaming on the Pixel 8a. And of course, you can always use the built-in screen here with touch controls if you want to, but personally, I like having a physical controller. So I'm going with the Backbone 1. This is the Android version. It's actually the PlayStation USB Type-C version. And I think this is going to fit in here pretty nicely. I'm actually used to seeing something like that S24 with a much larger display in here. But yeah, the Pixel 8a does fit right in this Backbone controller. And this is going to work with any game on Android that natively supports controllers. So something like Mincraft here, which is definitely an easier one to run. And with these newer Pixel phones and a lot of the newer Google phones, we do have kind of a game mode here. Some games will allow us to do some optimizations here, but the main thing is that on-screen FPS counter. There's a few extras here, like a screen recorder you can live stream to YouTube, but the main thing that I use is that on-screen frame counter. That way we can get real-time frame rate. I've got the screen on the 8A set to 120 Hz, and I was hoping we could run this at 120 without having to drop any of the chunks down. We're at about 24 right now, and if we dropped it down, we could lock this at 120. Now, playing this game at 120 is definitely overkill on an Android device. It will run at 60 all day, but it would have been nice just to be able to get on up there. Next up, we've got Call of Duty Mobile. I'm at medium settings with frame rate set to ultra, which will allow us to go up to 120 on the Pixel 8a. Not looking too bad here. Got a couple drops under 120, but it's definitely holding its own here with this one. Now, I want to get into something a bit harder to run on Android. I've got one more to test before that. Then we're going to move over to some emulation. And to do this, I'm going to set the phone up stationary so it's a bit easier on me. And if you don't want to fork out a lot of money for something like a Backbone controller, I completely understand. You can always connect a Bluetooth controller like an Xbox or a PlayStation controller. It's going to work great that way. Okay, so here we have Grand Theft Auto San Andreas Remastered. This is actually the Netflix version. This only runs at 30 FPS on Android. There's no way to take it up unless you modify the INI, and then sometimes it doesn't work because it's the Netflix version. So we're at 30, maxed out with the settings, and yeah, I mean, we can lock this down at 30 FPS. Now here's one that gives these Pixel phones a run for its money, and when I initially reviewed the 8 Pro, I had a lot of issues with this game. We really couldn't run it at even low 60 FPS, and since then, we still haven't been able to do that. It'll do about 42 FPS, high, unlocked, but I'd say the way to run this game is around medium settings, 30 FPS. Unfortunately, with this Tensor G3, just doesn't play well with Genshin Impact. And I was really hoping that the developers of Genshin Impact would give us a few optimizations specifically for this chip on the 8 Pro, but it doesn't look like much has changed from then till now, and the 8A is struggling at 60. You can run this at medium 30, but 60 is out of the question. Now I want to move over to some emulation, and the first thing we've got here is some PSP emulation using PPSSPP. We're at 4x resolution using the Vulkan backend. Tekken 6, looking great, not a problem to run this. And even moving over to something like Chains of Olympus at 4x, we're seeing 60 FPS across the board. So yeah, we've definitely got PSP covered, and when it comes to this, we can go with the lower end stuff. You want to go down to SNES, GBA, not a problem on this setup. I also wanted to test out a little bit of Dreamcast, so I've got the Redream emulator here, and we're upscaled to 1080, or as close as we can get given the aspect ratio. I haven't seen any issues here with Dreamcast on this device, and even the harder to emulate games like Crazy Taxi 2 can be done at 1080, and probably beyond. I didn't even test it there. Now it's time to check out some Gamecube and Wii emulation using the Dolphin emulator, and it looks like performance has been increased on this chip with this emulator. I'm not sure if the devs did anything or new driver optimizations with recent versions of Android, but with Gamecube, we're able to go up to 720 with a lot of these games. Here's Automodelista, one of the harder ones to emulate in my opinion, but F-Zero GX still gave me issues at 720p. I had to take that down to the Gamecube native resolution. I also threw in one of my favorite Wii games, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, 720p, Vulkan backend, and OpenGL with this chip, it will fall on its face, so don't even try it. Vulkan is definitely where it's at with these Mali GPUs. And the final thing I wanted to take a look at was some PS2 emulation using Nether SX2. Again, Vulkan backend, we're at 2x resolution, and with some of these games I could upscale a little more. I think it looks good on this display here, and overall, not too bad. I was actually expecting worse performance. But overall, PS2 is playable here with that Vulkan backend, and kind of just like GameCube and Wii, if you go to OpenGL, you're not going to see good performance at all. So in the end, yeah, the Pixel AA can game, but it's not top of the line, and I wasn't expecting that. This is their mid-range device coming in at $499, and if you're looking for those constant updates for 7 years, then this would definitely be a really good choice. Plus, you've got the option to play some native Android games, given Genshin Impact isn't going to run at 60, and of course, emulation on the AA. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Really appreciate you watching. If there's anything else you want to see running on the AA, just let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning a little more, I'll leave some links in the description. But that's it for this one. And like always, thanks for watching.